Be careful who you marry, and even more careful who you have children with. Sometimes, what terrifies you isn't the darkness itself, but the sudden flare of light that reveals a reality you weren't prepared to face. It was 2 in the morning when Richard woke to a muffled scream. Rising from bed, he felt his way through the dark hallway toward his son, Daniel's room. A faint glow spilling from beneath the door revealed Eva, his wife. Standing beside the bed, eyes filled with a strange terror, she turned to him and whispered. He's saying odd words, repeating a name I've never heard. Richard wasn't sure what she meant, but he felt an unfamiliar, ominous energy settling around them. A vague dread surfacing in the deepest hours of the night. A phrase he'd heard long ago, little more than a passing warning, now returned sharply to his mind. Be careful who you marry, and even more careful who you have children with. He had dismissed it back then, but watching Eva's expression and hearing her tense voice made him realize this was only the beginning of a truth long hidden. In the morning, Richard went to work, but found he couldn't concentrate. His mind circled around Eva's distress and Daniel's eerie muttering. Before he could regain focus, Eva called in a trembling voice. Richard, something's wrong. Daniel stares into empty space, laughing suddenly, then asking questions that make no sense. I'll be right there, he said, sprinting from his office, heart pounding as though it might burst from his chest. He recalled the cryptic words Eva's old neighbor had muttered at their wedding. I hope what happened in her family doesn't happen again. At home, he found Eva crouched in the corner of the living room, holding Daniel tight. The boy was pale and silent. Eva lifted her tearful gaze to Richard and said, He's been repeating a name, Annabelle. Does that mean anything to you? Of course, he'd never heard it before, but he could see the terror behind Eva's eyes. This went deeper than simple worry. Trying to soothe her, he asked gently, where did he learn that name? Eva blinked as if she herself was uncertain. I don't know, but Annabelle was my grandmother's name. The mention of an old family name brought to mind every foreboding hint he'd ever received about Eva's past. That night, once Daniel finally fell asleep, Richard guided Eva to his study, shut the door, and faced her. No more secrets. We need to talk about Annabelle. Eva hugged her arms, bracing herself. Annabelle was my mother's mother. She lost her mind after a bloody crime. At least, that's what I've been told. The details are lost in rumors, and my own mother refused to discuss it. A grim vision of madness emerged in Richard's mind. Could this be linked to Daniel's whispers? The next day, rummaging through the attic for any sign of Eva's family records, Richard found a small wooden box etched with the initials AH. Inside were yellowed scraps and ripped notes. One snippet read, "Blood leaves its stain on the hearts of those who witness, long before it soils the hands of those who commit the act. What I did cannot be forgiven nor forgotten." Signed, Annabelle Hyde. Richard's hands trembled. Annabelle Hyde. He'd never known Eva's grandmother's full name, but here it was. Another fragment of paper contained a single haunting line. I intended to erase him from existence, but a darker curse overtook me. Erase who? A husband, a child, or someone else. Deeper in the box lay a letter addressed to a George Hyde. George, by the time you read this, I will have buried my shame in blood that cannot be washed away. Don't let this tainted legacy seep into future generations. If my granddaughter survives, stop her from having children, for some lines carry only ruin. Signed, Annabelle. Reading this, Richard felt a suffocating dread. Stop her from having children. Could Annabelle have meant Eva specifically? The words from that old warning now hammered in his mind. Be careful who you marry, and even more careful who you have children with. But that evening, he confronted Eva with the papers. She struggled to form her words. Wes, my grandmother committed a crime. She was consumed by mania, lost all reason. My mother shielded me from the details. Annabelle was terrified we'd inherit her madness. Richard looked at her, heart pounding. So you knew there was a risk in having a child. Tears filled Eva's eyes. I didn't tell you because I never wanted us to lose a normal life. And yet, despite my terror, I wanted Daniel. I thought I could overcome a fate that wasn't really mine. He realized she'd hidden the truth out of denial and fear, not deception. Yet what if Daniel truly was threatened by this so-called family curse? And what if it was just superstition? Yet these strange night terrors kept happening. He was caught between caution and disbelief. Later that same night, Richard heard a sharp cry from Daniel's room. Racing inside, he found the boy upright in bed, eyes fixed on a shadowy corner. With one small finger outstretched, Daniel whispered, "Annabelle of Annabelle," as if someone were standing there in the dark. A chill coursed through Richard. Maybe this child was more than just an innocent boy. Perhaps the next link in a sinister family chain that refused to die. Determined to discover more, Richard spent a grueling day at the local archives. Beneath layers of dust, he found a long forgotten case file describing Annabelle Hyde's horrific crime. She was convicted of killing an infant, her own child, the records claimed, because she believed the family's madness lurked in their blood. The courts deemed her psychotic. Richard's heart hammered. Had Annabelle killed her children to prevent this madness from spreading? Was that why she warned against future descendants? Rushing home, he recounted the gruesome details to Eva. She collapsed into his arms, sobbing. My father tried to keep everything buried, thinking it would protect me, and then I married you, hoping you could chase the nightmares away with love. She looked over toward Daniel's room, where he lay restless. I never wanted him born into such a legacy. But now we're trapped in a storm I can't see a way out of. Richard breathed deeply, remembering the cautionary words. Maybe they weren't merely about fleeing or refusing to have children, but about awareness. Truly understanding the person you marry, the roots they come from, and the invisible threads that might ensnare your future. If Annabelle's madness was real, it wasn't the only thing to fear. Panic and secrecy could cause their own horrors, just as it had for Annabelle. In the end, he and Eva found themselves side by side in the living room. Daniel slept after a series of doctor visits. The therapist had advised them to be open, calm, and protective of him from half-truths. Richard turned to Eva and said quietly, "Fear is powerful enough to make us repeat your grandmother's actions. Even if there's a curse in your family's blood, giving in to terror is worse." Eva's voice was hushed but resolute. "We'll fight for our son, guided by love and awareness, not superstition. Maybe my father and grandmother weren't saying we were doomed, just that we could destroy ourselves if fear ruled us." Their eyes met, and once again Richard recalled that initial warning, "Be careful who you marry." But now he understood what it really meant. Never to mistrust or isolate, but to enter marriage fully aware, ready to take responsibility for the life you build together. They found themselves facing a test more daunting than flawed genes or the memory of a crazed ancestor. It was a test of fear. Would they let it consume them or transform it into a guiding light toward hope? Only time would tell. Moral of the story: our past can be laden with dark secrets and heavy shadows, but truth remains our most potent weapon against fear. In marriage, the greatest danger isn't merely someone else's misdeeds, but our own readiness to confront reality together. Be careful who you marry doesn't imply distrust. It implies a commitment to honesty and shared responsibility. And as for having children, it can bring both life's greatest joy or its darkest dread. The difference hinges on awareness, mutual courage, and unwavering love.